Hey, Mr. Mayor, we are 11 ready when you are.
Okay, sounds good. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's the meeting of the Seldovia City Council, Monday, January 27th, 2025. Time is 6:06 p.m. And we'll go ahead and do roll call. Kennedy.
Here.
Let's see. Peyton is excused. Keithley.
Here.
Langbart. She's still not joined yet. Okay, so she's absent. Barber.
Here.
And Rojas.
Here.
Okay, so we do have 4 out of 6 currently present, so we do have a quorum. So we will go ahead and continue with the meeting. And Heidi or Liz, if you could lead us off in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Right now, excuse absences, Peyton, and still waiting for Langbart to join us here this evening. Item D, agenda approval. We'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda by Keithley with a second by Rojas. Any additional discussion on the agenda before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of tonight's agenda. All those in favor, Kennedy?
Aye.
Keithley?
Aye.
Barber?
Aye.
Rojas?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 4 in the affirmative and 2 absent. Item E, consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are approved with a single motion, no discussion, and 1 vote. A council member may request to remove any item for discussion and a separate vote. Items removed from the consent agenda will be placed under new business. It's fairly lengthy tonight. The consent agenda consists of approval of minutes of the regular meeting, January 13th, 2025. Ordinance introduction, there are 3. Ordinance 2A, Ordinance 25-06, a non-code ordinance of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, amending the FY25 budget by appropriating an additional $5,000 to the general fund, council department, contract services for participation in the Alaska Municipal League Professional Grant Writing Service. Item 2B is Ordinance 25-07, a non-code ordinance of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, amending the FY25 budget by appropriating funds from the Major Maintenance and Repair Fund to the Water and Sewer Funds for unanticipated expenses. And item 2C, Ordinance 25-08, a non-code ordinance of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, amending the FY25 budget by appropriating the $8,859.18 in remaining American Rescue Plan Act funds to the General Fund and Water Special Revenue Fund. Let's see, consent agenda also consists of Resolution 3A, that's Resolution 25-31, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, approving a lease with Kohl's Vending for a 1-year term and a monthly base rent of $350 for Seldovia Gateway Kiosk located on Lot 6, Block 10, Waterfront Resub Number 1, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute the appropriate documents. And then finally, the consent agenda also consists of 3 action memorandums. The first one's 4A, Action Memorandum 25-04, City Council Statement of Non-Objection for the renewal of the Linwood Bar Beverage Dispensary Liquor License number 656 and the Linwood Bar Package Store Liquor License number 657. Item 4B, Action Memorandum 25-05, reappointment of Allison Rain to the Seldovia Planning Commission for a 3-year term expiring December 2027. And the last item, 4C, Action Memorandum 25-06, reappointment of Henry Kroll to the Seldovia Planning Commission for a 3-year term expiring December 2027. That is the lengthiest consent agenda we've had in quite some time, but it is good. All right, at this time, does any member wish to remove any item off the consent agenda to speak about individually? Okay, Heidi, I have one question. Real quick, just for clarification on ordinance 25-06, was the 5,000 the full cost, or was the 5,000 wasn't it 10,000 the full cost?
10,000 is the full cost, so we were going to split that between fiscal years since it's for a calendar year by appropriating an additional 5,000 for FY25, and then when we talk about FY26, we can appropriate another 5,000 there.
Okay, perfect. I thought that might be the case with only seeing 5,000 there. So, okay, that was the only question I had. So, all right, last chance. Any items for removal from any of the members? Okay, hearing none, we will go and look for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve tonight's consent agenda by Rojas with a second by Kennedy. Any further discussion on the consent agenda before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of tonight's consent agenda. All those in favor, Kennedy,
Aye.
Keithley,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
and Rojas.
Aye.
Okay, consent agenda is approved this evening as written with a vote tally of 4 in the affirmative and 2 absent. Okay, item F, mayoral proclamations. We have none tonight. Item G, public presentation prior notice. We do have one presenter tonight. That is Elliot Clausen with Moffitt Nickel, and this is regarding the Jackaloff Bay 95% design presentation. And I see Elliot is online.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, he is joining us, panelists. I would like to point out one thing before he joins, that I did make an error when I was speaking about the timeline before. I got really excited because we're hoping to have the RFP for construction go out in the fall, but I did not consider the length of time for the fabrication of the floats, which means even though that construction RFP goes out in the fall, we're still not looking at construction until the spring. And Elliot will explain a little bit more of that. It's a kind of a disappointment. And I was looking at the harbor master going, can we go another winter? And by golly, we're going to try. But we have Elliot here to give us a little bit more details. I just wanted to point that out before you guys hear it.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Hi, all. This is Elliot Clausen. I guess first off, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you loud and clear, Elliot.
Awesome. Well, in that case, I believe that the slides were distributed, but I'll pull them up here and I'll share my screen. One moment.
And for the council, the slides will be in your lay down.
All right. All right. So my screen should be coming through. Are y'all seeing that?
Yep, just popped up.
All right. Well, hi everyone. Thanks for welcoming me to your council meeting here. Hopefully I don't take up too much of your time, but I'm here for as long or as little as you'd like to hear from me. So we're going to be talking about the Jackaloff Bay dock replacement. Going to be giving you a brief kind of update on where we're at and where we're going, and then essentially going to answer any questions that I can. We'll hop right into it. So do a quick introduction for those of you that aren't aware, we're involved in the process. So Mofton Nickel was founded in 1945, and our project team has been serving Alaska since the early 70s. We're pretty excited. This is our third year, ranked as the #1 port and marine facility design firm by Engineering News Record. That's the predominant, I would say, publication that tracks that kind of data. We have a fair bit of federal grant and program experience. That's going to be led by Margaret Schwertner, you see on the right there, and Taylor Myers helping her. So I believe we've done 5 port-related MARAD EAs since 2016, and I believe that's in Alaska, and then another 6 company-wide. Working with us, we have sub-consultants for the geotechnical portion. That's Shannon Wilson. They also have a strong history working in Alaska. On the team, you have myself, Elliot Clausen. I'm the project manager. Sean McFarland, who I believe is on the call tonight as an attendee. He's our project director. He actually started the Alaska office and has grown it considerably in the time under his stewardship. We also have Charles Balzerini as our QA/QC manager. Some of you may recognize Charles's name from a project in Seldovia about 10 years ago or so. Margaret and Taylor, we've talked about. Eunice Nuri, our coastal engineer, who put together one of our deliverables for you that we'll touch on later. And then Kyle Brennan is the geotechnical engineer for Shannon Wilson that led our geotechnical explorations and efforts. So project outline, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this. Just kind of put some of the main elements on the left there, but the big one that I want to talk about is that the compliance with MARAD, or the U.S. DOT Maritime Administration, that's really important for this project because that's where almost all of the funding for this is coming from. And so with that, we've identified as one of our critical success factors being cost, and that making sure that we secure the MARAD funding and stay within it. That is that I would say that is critical success factor #1. The second one is schedule. I heard Heidi mentioning that you're trying to see if the current dock will go another year or not. You guys need something fairly quickly, and we recognize that that's important. And then the third one, I'm going to say I'll throw in quality, and this is really because if something goes wrong, if let's say work or materials are subpar, there's not a secondary pot of money to do any sort of significant repairs. So those are 3 critical success factors that we've identified to date. So there's a lot here on this slide. I'm going to touch briefly on this. You can look at this in however much detail you'd like. But essentially, on the engineering side, Sean and I completed a site investigation in April. That was a way for us to, we were able to trim down our proposal fee. We had originally planned on having another sub-consultant do surveying, topographic and bathymetric surveying, but unfortunately there wasn't budget. So Sean and I did a site investigation, got as much of the data as we could. We also did what we called a concept design refinement. So taking I would say the written description by Turnagain Marine from, I think, 2021, and essentially turning that into some figures. That was turned around and submitted to the city in August. Our mid-ocean analysis, that was the document prepared by Eunice Nuri. It is essentially detailing what type of environmental forces your new system needs to be designed for, and that was submitted in December. The geotechnical investigation, the drilling was in early September. There was a follow-up geophysical exploration in, I think, a couple weeks later, I think September 18th, 19th, somewhere in that time frame. And then the final submittal, the final report was submitted to the city at the start of this year. We're currently working on our contract documents, so our 95% documents. This is what's called a design build approach. We can talk more about that if anyone would like, but the core of it is that what we're doing is preparing together a set of what are called conceptual documents, and then a contractor will bid on that set of documents, and they will finish they will finish elements of the design. They usually do that by hiring their own engineering teams. This is fairly common for float type projects in Alaska, in particular because the floats themselves are designed by the float manufacturers. And so for a project like this, where as far as engineering goes, almost all of the work is the floats, this type of a design build approach, I think, makes the most sense. We're preparing to submit to you at the end of this week our 95% plan specs and what we call a Class 3 opinion of probable construction cost. And that Class 3 has to do with what level of accuracy we think it represents. On the permitting side, or I should say on the MARAD side, Section 7 and Section 106 are going to be completed. Those should be wrapped up by early summer 2026. So Section 106, that's going to be completed in March 2025, and Section 7, we'll say late slash early spring, summer 2026. For permitting, the federal and state permit applications for the US nationwide, those are being submitted in February. We're expecting to obtain permits in late 2025. And then coordination with the Department of Natural Resources is currently ongoing. And I believe Heidi is leading a portion of that. So here's our schedule. This is showing you kind of what's been done and what we're looking at here. There's a couple of things that I want to highlight on this, and I apologize for some of the small text. It's a little hard to fit all this on one sheet. But I think you should be able to see some circles appearing on the screen where my mouse is. So we're essentially coming to the end of our 95% design. And then what you see here is our 100% design documents kind of pushed out off to the side over here, coinciding with when we expect to have the state and local, or the merit grant agreement finished and the permitting wrapped up. And that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, we need to make sure that any permitting and merit requirements are incorporated in the bid documents. And the other one is that MARAD does not typically like to see that you have reached 100% design before they have had an opportunity to provide input. So that's the reason for I would say, this kind of delay between the 95 and the 100%. Another important factor is that you are not allowed to award the project until you have the MARAD funding secured. So that is where you see that some of this, essentially when you start engaging contractors, we have that set for, essentially there's a little bit of a break between when some of the processes are wrapped up and the actual signing, the anticipated signings, this red dot here. And then once that's done, then you can actually award. So the way we've got it set up is you can seek proposals, or you can seek bids, but you can't actually award until you sign the agreement, and then you can award. At that point, you have a little bit of time to determine who you'd like to work with, and then they have time to go and manufacture things. And so, this float design and fabrication, that's this item. Whether or not it actually takes that amount of time is not, I don't think that's really the driving factor. I think the main driving factor here is that can't really start construction until spring of 2026. So that kind of longer purple bar just gives the contractor more time to coordinate their efforts and get ready for construction. So I'll show you a couple of snippets from our plans here real quick that we currently have. I know that you all are probably very intimately familiar with the dock, but just giving you a little bit of what we have, so we're all looking at the same thing. So currently we're looking at removing a relatively small concrete landing pad, a relatively small timber ramp, and then demolishing about 240 feet of access floats. We're also removing, I think in total, it's about 175, 180 linear feet of 10-foot wide boarding floats. Those are the ones your vessels actually moor up against. And then there's also demoing 12 approximately 10-inch diameter creosote treated timber piles. So essentially removing everything. And then what goes in is largely the same. So we're putting back in the a landing pad with a timber ramp, relatively small, putting in the same linear footage and size of access floats and boarding floats. We are not, while we show 12 piles on this drawing, we're not restricting the contractor to 12 piles. This is where some of the nuance with design build comes in. The contractor may be able to, as they work with their sub-consultant for float manufacturing, they may decide that they can use fewer. They may decide that they need more, but a smaller size. So leaving this part open-ended for the contractor's design team is a potential area of savings on the construction side. One of the things that I should have added a label for is that we're proposing adding to the dock 3 features. Those would be safety ladders, and the final location will be determined by the contractor, but we've kind of schematically shown them at the end of the boarding floats and at the beginning of the boarding floats. We're also proposing adding life rings with I think 50 feet of rope, as well as fire extinguisher cabinets every 75 feet or so. And those are really, they're not particularly expensive safety items, but they are the kinds of features that if you ever find yourself needing them, you will very much want them. So those, you can see those, and you'll see these in our 95% plans, but essentially they're at the beginning and end of the boarding floats, and then there's an additional fire extinguisher about halfway down the boarding float. But other than that, largely the same system. And I would say steel piles instead of timber piles. So I'll show you one of our typical details. This is for the float access plan. We're not going to go over all the details necessarily, unless there's something here you'd like to look at. But just really trying to show you that a lot of what you're going to be getting is the same 6-foot wide access floats. The pile guide here is shown somewhat schematically. The actual shape may vary a little bit. They're going to have to figure out what will work for the tide range. But this is I think the key takeaway here is that they're 6-foot wide floats. They have external pile guides, and those are really the two big takeaways. And then here we have our typical boarding float plan. So here the takeaway is 10-foot wide with about a 6-foot clear width for travel. And then the other difference here is that the boarding floats use an internal pile guide, and the reason for that is so that you can park a vessel. You have more space to park vessels, whereas if you use that external pile guide system or a pile hoop, you limit your available space for vessels to actually moor. So I think now this is the part that people are probably most interested in here. Cost. People lots of interest here. So this is from our OPCC, and I'm going to go through some of these in a little bit more detail, but I want just to start off to give you an estimate of, or show you how we're kind of breaking out the work. So the first one is what we call mobilization, demobilization, or mob and demob. Freight, the cost to actually get the materials there, and the regulatory requirements. Our next item is the cost to actually remove the existing dock. And then lastly, there's the cost to build or construct the new dock. And then down here, you can see our estimate, and then we give a range of essentially confidence. So we think that it could go as low as 2.2 or 15% less than our total, and it could potentially go as high as 3.1 million. And we'll step through some of these slides and look at these in a little bit more detail. So for MOB, DMOB freight and the regulatory requirements, I think the real driving factor here is going to be MOB, DMOB, and freight. So you see that there is kind of a fairly nominal cost for marine mammal monitoring. This is essentially during pile driving, there needs to be some sort of monitoring to make sure that there's no, I think whales, but I think in your area, the big one is otters. But that pile driving puts a lot of vibrations into the water, which can disturb the aquatic life there. So there needs to be someone essentially making sure that those animals aren't present, which is relative to the overall cost fairly small. There's also a small amount where the contractor actually hires someone to design the piles and the landing pad and the ramp. They're not particularly heavy items, but there is a cost there for that. The big item and the actual breakout of this is, I would say not as important as the aggregate. So the cost for MOB, DMOB, and then delivery, um, that that is, I think, the heart of what this is. And those numbers came from speaking with a contractor that does a lot of work throughout Alaska and getting their input on what they thought it would take to get a crew, get equipment out there, get the materials up. And what the input that they gave us was that, after markup and bond, it could be anywhere from $600 to $750,000. And I think that we currently, after markup and bond, our MOB DMOB is roughly 600,000, and I think we have a little over 150 for freight afterwards. So after markup and bond, so there is a potential. We took the higher end of that estimate, but not by a lot, by about 150 grand. And the reason for that is that it's possible that another contractor could maybe not see the same efficiency there. It is, it's not guaranteed that the people we spoke with will be the ones to bid it. And I also think that part of our responsibility to the city is to prepare you for a worst case scenario, because I think it would be much worse to give you the impression that everything's fine, and then bids come in and you find that you don't have enough funding, as opposed to there may be a little bit of a deficit, and you have time to potentially secure other funding. So there is a little bit of a range. Oops, sorry. There is a little bit of a range to that, but in general, those numbers, I would expect it to be roughly in that area. For demolishing the existing system, essentially a lump sum of 100,000. This is essentially 3-ish days worth of work for a crew. And then, how much they actually, what, how much they actually have to like remove from the site, that could potentially lower that number. There was some talk that community members may be interested in salvaging some of the materials. If the contractor doesn't have to haul away materials, that'll cut down on the estimated cost. But then it will be whoever takes on those materials, it will be their responsibility to make sure that they're properly disposed of. But I would say that the cost for removing the existing system is not the driving factor. So next we have the cost for constructing the new dock, and this essentially includes purchasing the materials and then the cost to install them. And I'll just point out here that for the float material costs, so this 324,000 for 6-foot wide access floats, and this 374,000 for the boarding floats, the 10-foot wide floats. Those were numbers that came from communicating with a predominant manufacturer of floats for projects in Alaska. They're based out of Washington, but they produce a lot of the floats that are used throughout Alaska. So those numbers came directly from a manufacturer. The pile material cost, so this 71,000 and change, that was another one that came from a material manufacturer. I think a lot of some when it comes to piles, some of that is you know, lots of dealerships sell Chevy. They're all selling the same product. Which one you go with, it's probably going to be representative of whatever's in that area. So I don't think that you're going to see a lot of variation from one manufacturer, one supplier to another. And then you essentially have a little bit of time to install piles. We've assumed 12. That's, I think, tied to the number of piles that are currently out there. 12 piles at, I think, 1 to 2 piles a day puts you at 150,000. And then there's also time to install the floats. The floats are less because they essentially come, for the most part, pre-assembled, and they have to be placed and then more essentially bolted in place. So there's not as much work that goes into putting the floats in place as there is the piles. Then there is a nominal amount of work for installing the ramp and the pad, a little bit of site preparation, putting concrete and rebar, and then framing up a small ramp. Really not the driving cost. And then there's also purchasing and installing fire extinguishers, life rings, and ladders. That was scaled from a recent project we are doing, another MARAD funded project. And that was essentially scaled from I think they had more of each item, but yeah, that's where that 7,000 comes from. And then here, what we did was we took a look at our construction, our estimate. So we pretty much immediately recognized that there's likely going to be a funding gap, and we wanted to provide the city with a way of understanding kind of the extent of that. So we took our total construction cost, and that's these numbers on the left, the same ones that we looked at a few slides ago. Put on and assumed 2.5% for construction administration. So these are things like reviewing contractor RFIs and submittals, attending meetings. It would include things like an inspection to go oversee or I would say oversee. It includes an inspection of the float manufacturer, as well as a couple of site visits during construction. And I think 2.5% is a fairly common benchmark for that. We've also included the fee that Edmund Moffitt and Nicholas currently under contract for not just the engineering, but the MARAD helping with the MARAD grant agreement as well as permitting. And then after that, we take all of that, add it up into a total project cost, and then comparing that against what your MARAD funding with the city match. And I believe we got that from the MARAD grant application. And then on the far right, you can see the expected funding gap. So it's anywhere from a little under $100,000 on the low end to about $1 million on the high end. And that is the genesis of how we got that. I have one more slide to share with you, and then I think would welcome any questions, and we can hop around to any slides. I should have mentioned that at the start of this, but I'll do one more here. So for NEPA public notice, there is one of the requirements for MARAD is that people in the community have to have the ability to comment on the project. So that 30-day period starts tomorrow, January 28th. It goes for 30 days. All comments have to be received by 5 p.m. on February 28th to be included. And then there are some links at the bottom that people can go to provide public comment. So with that, does anyone have any questions or anything that they'd like for me to expand on?
Yeah, Meg, I see you got your hand up. Thanks, Elliot, for the presentation. Appreciate that.
And Mr. Mayor, I think that's actually Sean McFarland
Sean?
with
Yep.
with Moffitt and Nickel.
Yep, go ahead, Sean.
Hey, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Great, thank you. Hey, thanks, Elliot. Great summary. And I just wanted to jump in on support of a couple things Elliot mentioned. One of them recognizing that the Jackaloff float is in terrible condition. I just returned from Haynes, where we're working with the Haynes Borough on their Letnikov float replacement. Perhaps 2025 is a bad year for floats named after with Eastern European names, but their float blew apart this winter and had to be taken out, and they're not sure they're going to get it back in to get it fixed. So I offer that as somewhere between cold comfort and misery loves company, that it is time to replace the float. We recognize that you do want to get it done post haste, but I say that to say this and to offer this, that the timing of this, we were fortunate to, under the previous administration and with our Alaska delegation's support, to get Seldovia as well as some other communities funding, which allow you to get this project done. But as you can imagine, with the sheer amount of MARAD funding happening across the country, not to mention these, I believe, 16 different communities in Alaska, there's now a lot of work on the market, and float manufacturers are very busy, contractors are busy. We're seeing that some of our projects are only getting one or two bidders coming in to bid the work. So it's good when there's money out there, but when there's a lot of it, unfortunately, it puts you in line. And Elliot did mention the very real issue of waiting on our permits and going through the MARAD process to get this funded. That, combined with really needing to get in line with the float manufacturers to get the project built, is what's pushing this to 2026. So I think we're somewhat in line with a lot of other communities trying to engage their funding. So I just offer that as a bit of additional context as you're working through this. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate the additional information there. I got one quick question for you, Elliot, on the steel cost. Is this I can't remember, Heidi had mentioned, I think this is a Buy American, but is that the case?
Yeah, so one of the MARAD requirements, we do have the BABA requirements, Build America, Buy American, and that is included in the steel cost.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that any future tariffs were either taken into consideration, or because it's going to be a large one here coming up here pretty soon, I anticipate. So okay, one other on the marine mammal observation, the monitoring portion of that. Do you have any idea of how close you might not be the right one for this, but how close the mammals can be before there's a stoppage or a shutdown?
Good question. So it really depends. So one of the things that we are doing is with the design build approach is we're trying to leave the permitting options as open as possible to the contractor. So what we've essentially done is we've looked at, I think, 3 or 4 different methods, and we have looked at a couple of different pile sizes and installation times across those methods. So I think in total, we've I feel like I've looked at least 10 different options, and the actual range, the range that they have to monitor, and I think it's predominantly a range, not so much a duration. Let me rephrase. The duration is during pile installation activities. The real trick there is the range, because depending on the method, and if the agencies buy off on the fact that Jackaloff is a closed bay, then it really is going to depend on what they want to do. I think the worst case scenario, and I don't see anyone going with this route, would be a range of about 7 miles. But I think that we have, and that would be to the north. But I believe that the approach that we are trying to present is that it is a closed bay. There's a little bit of a land that kind of blocks off any potential wave propagation through the water. And if that's the case, then that range will be much smaller. It's essentially that local region. But the actual range it varies quite a bit depending on whether or not they use vibratory installation methods, impact hammers, or they use what's called pneumatic down the hole drilling, or they do some version of a cast and drilled hole pile. Each of those introduces different levels of vibration to the water, and those also impact different classes of mammals. So there's two different zones. It's there's a lot of nuance, but the short version is that it lasts for as long as there's pile driving. It's really the range that they have to monitor is the biggest factor.
Okay, yeah, obviously it sounds like you guys have taken all that into consideration, and then the contractors will have the ability when they're bidding it to figure out what's going to work best for schedule and costs. So
Yeah.
cool. All right, thanks. No, I appreciate the info on that. Any additional questions from anyone on council?
Mayor Campbell, I got a couple.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I'm just curious on the demolition of the dock. I'm assuming that if you were to show up there and go to work and all that was left was the pilings to demo of that, what's it like $150,000? It still would take a considerable amount of that funding to be able to remove those pilings, correct?
It depends. I think that you could probably cut it. I suppose it depends on what they have to do with the piles. You could probably knock, could they do, you might, at best, you could knock that down in half, but it depends on what they're doing with the
Okay.
materials when it's all said
Yeah,
and done.
that makes sense. I just actually I figured it to be less. And then the other question I have is regarding the fire extinguishers.
Okay.
Are they secured in a cabinet? I can't remember.
Yeah, another good question. So we that's something that we've included in our specs, that the fire extinguishers need to be in a cabinet that is mounted to the deck of the dock.
Right.
So the fire extinguisher, life ring, and the ladders would all be mounted, and I don't recall if the life ring has to be in a
Right. So that if somebody needed access to those extinguishers, they'd break a piece of glass, I'm assuming, and maybe an alarm go off, correct?
I don't think that we're requiring anything with an alarm, because
Okay.
the other one with an alarm is who would that go to?
Yeah.
I think that the way that it's currently written, they could do some sort of breakaway glass. There's also we're not limiting them in terms of if they just want to be able to open a door and take a
Okay.
fire extinguisher
Yeah.
out.
The thing that's driving my question really is my concerns for theft and that being so far out of town. That's why I'm asking the question. That's all I had. Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks, John. I see Sean's got his hand back up there.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to offer some history dating back probably 15 years to working with City and Borough of Sitka. I think this is tagging on to the last gentleman's first question about if the floats were removed. City and Borough of Sitka was demolishing an old harbor, and local residents were interested in salvaging the floats. So it was basically, come on in and get them. They're all yours. And a large number of those floats ended up breaking apart, submerging, and ending up as various pieces of rubble and styrofoam across Sitka's shoreline. And then they had to go and retrieve them because, predictably they were on their last legs and blew apart. So I think the lesson learned, at least from Sitka's perspective, was if they were going to do it again, they would do that, certainly with charging people $1 a section or something like that, and having a very clear indicator of who was taking what and who was responsible for that float and its ultimate use. Otherwise, you could end up with a problem there in town.
Okay, well, I really appreciate that. That's exactly what I'm looking for, is what type of problems we could run into with that happening. Thank you.
They're not going to perform any better for local residents as they are currently for the city. So just keep that in mind.
Perfect. All right. Anyone else with any questions for Elliot or Sean? Heidi, did we have anyone from the public that wished to ask any questions or have any comments for Elliot or Sean here?
Yeah, we have no members of the public here at this time.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Well, I was just one comment too, and for me, only thing I was a little disappointed. I knew from the beginning we were, for in terms of costs and stuff that we were going to go back generally with what we had there. I know Sean had explained that, and that's the easiest for permitting all that. One question, I was hoping to see the 6-foot floats be more like 8-foot, just get a little wider base. I know it gets a little, and it may. Now I guess I take it into perspective when you show up and the float's half submerged and it's got snow on it and everybody's schlepping their stuff on the dock. The 6-foot gets just a little narrow, that's why I was hoping to see more along the lines of 8. But I'm wondering if a person had gone to 8, would that have affected the permitting? Is that the predominant reason it wasn't considered?
That is, yeah. So it's a lot easier when you're doing a project like this to say that you're not increasing the footprint at all. If you start increasing the footprint, then I would say there's more scrutiny over what you're doing and why you're doing it and what are the impacts. It's much easier and you get a better, I would say like a faster turnaround if you can just say, we're putting in pretty much exactly what's there, but newer and a little bit better. And if you start, when you start increasing in size or they look a little bit more closely, and a little more scrutiny.
Okay. Yeah, no, and I know Sean had in the beginning, he had really explained that to us that it needed to be pretty close to what we have here. So one last question for me I was looking in the detail here. I guess we just have got plan views, no sections. What kind of freeboard are we looking at here from the water to the top of the float?
Oh, that's a good question. So the freeboard varies depending on the load condition. I
And
don't
probably
want to pull.
manufacture a float too, I would assume a little bit.
Well, they can what we do is that we tell them pretty much what we want and we give them certain tolerances. So God, I don't.
Elliot, aren't we looking at in round? It's not a round number, but I think it's around 16 inches of freeboard. Isn't that what we look for
I
in these
think
lower floats?
16 inches under loaded conditions would be, I think that's probably, if I had to guess, the minimum. But then we also have a freeboard condition for when no one's on it. And I think that's somewhere between 18 and 22 inches, somewhere in that range. But then, yes, when it's loaded, and then there's different loading criteria. For example, if you have a lot of people kind of spread out, that's one condition. There's also a condition where maybe someone's standing on the edge and they're trying to, well, here, I'll go over here. Maybe someone's standing on the edge and they're loading or unloading supplies. You have a bigger load at one spot. But under those conditions, it's about 16 inches. Yeah.
Okay. No, obviously it's better than -2 and 10 or 6 or whatever we have now. So, and then last question, the bull rail that you've got shown here on the plan view, is there an option for a pipe rail versus timber rail, or what had you guys priced out? Maybe I missed that in there.
Oh, no, you didn't miss it. Good question. So what we currently have here is they're what's called glue laminate timber members. So they just take pieces of wood and they more or less glue them together to form sections. So it's a timber bull rail with timber scuppers for tying up. That's probably going to be your most cost-effective option if you wanted to look at something like steel pipe. The steel is going to would cost more. So I would say it's something that we could consider, but your best option for economy is going to be the timber bull rail, and then it'll be treated just like it'll have treatment. I will say just like the rest of the wooden components will have treatment, but it'll probably be like a little bit different. They get different kinds, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm pretty familiar with all those.
To Mayor Campbell's question, I think first of all, in terms of going with wider floats, you know, we did talk with you up front, and throughout the project, it's been emphasized, hey, we don't have another pot of money sitting here to spend extra on if we run over budget. So we really have been trying to adhere to the available funding as best we can. Of course, we can't control the, you know, what's happening in the supply chain or with the contractors in the market, but you know, that's another good reason for the in place, in kind replacement. But I would also offer, although Elliott is on the cusp of issuing the 95% design package here, and we do not really expect or really desire to have many changes between 95 and 100%. There may be opportunities down the road to tweak things, just as you're suggesting here on the bull rail. Case in point, one of the other 5 projects that Elliott mentioned is in Sandpoint for the Aleutians East Borough. We've gone to bid for that. We successfully, as the project was successfully bid under budget, and that gave the opportunity to go back to the float manufacturer and actually add some additional square footage of floats and some additional features, like we had rub boards there that we upgraded, and the bull rail was already in a way that they like. But all this to say, if the project does come in under budget, perhaps to the lower end, which we hope, of what Elliott's estimate is, there may be an opportunity to award the project, then go back to the contractor and ask for some upgrades and additions.
John, could you just simply include an alt bid item in there and have that pricing provided up front, whether most likely an additive and not a deductive? I'm assuming based on what Elliott said there.
That's certainly something we could do. It adds a little bit of complexity to the bid, but you know, it causes us to have to design it both ways. I don't think we've necessarily budgeted in for that. I guess if there is a laundry list of things you'd like to consider, let's get that list over to Elliott, and then honestly, I really think you're covered, in the sense that if the project is bid and you're able to award at a price that's good, you're going to be able to deal with the contractor at that time on some of these changes. And frankly, if it comes in high, you may be dealing with the contractor on some cost savings going in the other direction.
Yeah, which would be unfortunate. Like those HDPE rub boards, I know those are going to be very expensive. So they're super nice, but yeah, I know they're expensive too. So, okay, yeah, no, that's fine. I just wanted to get that out there for conversation's sake. So, no, I get it. You guys are doing what you're supposed to be doing and trying to keep it within the box here.
Yeah, and I think that in particular with going to a wider float, that would be something that we would really need to know sooner rather than later. Because essentially at 2 feet more for 240 feet, that would add about, let me see, I can do this. That add about 15% square footage to our area, which I would say there's more. Even if you had the money for that kind of an upgrade, when bids came in, you would still be limited by what you were permitted under. So in general, you can always go down from what you've permitted. It's really hard to go up, and I would say that I would potentially cause some delays if you wanted to. If you wanted to essentially re-engage with permitting
Strongly
agencies.
recommend against that right now, because
Yeah,
your
no, I'm
permits
with you, Sean.
are in line and are being processed. Yeah.
Yep, that was purely for discussion's sake. So I would not want to be the guy that torpedoed that and added another year to the project. So nope, purely for discussion's sake. So yeah, appreciate all your guys' answers on those. Good discussion. So all right, last chance. Anyone on council? Any final questions before we let these guys go? Yeah, we're not getting anything there out of Jack's mic.
Yeah, the project, does it go out for competitive bidding?
Yes, this would go out for competitive bidding.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks, Elliot and Sean. Appreciate you guys' your guys' time and good update. And yeah, we're excited. We're super excited, and I think the rest of the community is, as well as our surrounding communities across the bay and around the corner. So a lot of people use that dock, and a lot of people will be excited to see the new dock put in there. So for sure.
Thank you for having us here. Thank you for the opportunity to present this and the opportunity to work with you. I also want to take a moment to thank Heidi. She's been absolutely great to work with. Just very responsive, like very helpful, getting us whatever we needed. I would say thoroughly and in a timely manner. She's been great. So
Yeah,
been very good to
good
work with her and Layla.
Good to hear. Last question though, I just realized on the public notice here, is that where will that be appearing for folks to comment? And I'm assuming that's both negative and positive comments. That's what you're expecting to see?
Yeah, negative, positive, neutral. That would all be at there's the link at the bottom there. I think it's cityofseldovia.com/Jackaloff that is let's see, comments will be I believe that's where they can go. Yeah, that should be
Sure,
the
if it
link.
was newspaper or anything like that, or Heidi, you might know them a little bit more too.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we were wrapping up that webpage today. The public notice announcement goes out first thing in the morning. We'll have laminated copies at Jockloff itself, as well as posted around the regular areas in town on Facebook. We'll have a link to it on the front of the city webpage, as well as its own webpage for the project, and then it'll go out on the email notification list.
Perfect. All right. Well, good. All right. Elliot, Sean, thanks again, you guys, for the presentation. And yeah, it looks like we're on track for about what we expected here. So looking forward to just keep this process rolling along, and hopefully we don't hit any big hiccups anywhere.
Well, thank you again. I'll leave you all to the rest of your meeting. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. You guys have a good night.
You too.
Good night.
Mayor Campbell.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Hey, I just have a comment regarding the demo and the questions that I had. I don't think, based on what we learned there, I think maybe some notes would probably be in order. And I wouldn't be in favor of, any public demo of that dock at all, just because the big comment that kind of stuck with me was, the material is failing for the existing dock. And then if community members take it and provide other docks, then we got a mess to deal with down the road, unless there's something written on that. So I think we're better off to just have them demo the dock. The only thing that I could think of is maybe some of that newer material on the 10-foot section for the city to demo. But other than that, I don't think I'd be in favor of any public demo.
Yeah, John, I agree with having some system in place, and then whether or not when the bid documents come out, if the contractor ends up, if those become the property of the contractor, then figuring out if the contractor has the right to get rid of those locally. And I guess part of our concern would be just to make sure it's addressed, that if the contractor were to do something like that, also that there's some recourse, and documents in place to make sure we don't end up with a big mess if someone were to lose those. And I think we had this discussion here last year, Heidi, with a couple some of the other stuff. When I see Layla's hand up from the original boat harbor project as well. So
right. I did, my whole point being is some good notes on the feedback we received from them today. I think could be good because it's coming.
Yeah, no, for sure. Layla, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, sorry, my service is terrible tonight. But so last time for construction in the harbor, what we did is we had the construction company actually cut lengths of dock in the lengths that were requested. And then I help manage all of that once they were cut up into distributing them with the liability paperwork that goes along with that. And also anybody that receives those pieces of dock has to get their own permits to be in Catchmack Bay. That was a bit of a learning curve with Homer, and our construction last time fell right after they did. So we can do it. It's not hard to do, but it's definitely quite a bit, but you want them to cut up those chunks.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I agree. Let's make sure we learn from the past, and whatever we decide, yeah, we've got some good history, and I think we know what to do moving forward here. So we'll have plenty more opportunity as we get closer, John, obviously to make sure that this is addressed. So cool. Thanks, Layla. Appreciate that information. All right. If everyone's done with that, we'll go ahead and keep on rolling here. That concluded item G. Item H, public presentation for items not on the agenda. Do we have anyone signed up tonight, Liz?
No, do not, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you. Item I, committee and advisory board reports. I see none for this evening. Is that still the case?
Yes, that's still the case.
All right, perfect. And then we'll move on to item J, administrative reports. The first one's the finance report. These are our quarterly reports. And so I see Jan is online, so we'll let her take the first crack here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm going to start with the sound check. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. Okay, so this is the finance report as of about a week ago. And I'm going to preface actually with the note that's at the end, which is that we are, in terms of payroll, we're about 58% of the way through the year. And I'm putting that in there because as we know, payroll is a significant expense in each of the classes. And because we tend to do these toward the end of the month, especially in the special revenue funds, we are once again in the position where we have not recognized any of the revenue or very little of the revenue for the special revenue funds for the month of January, but we have recorded both payrolls that hit in January. So I just want you to keep that in mind as we go through the different funds. The general fund, we are at about 89% of our projected revenues already, which is quite good. Of course, a lot of that is our sales tax, and we do always see the largest part of our sales tax generally September through November, and then we see those monthly remittances drop off quite a bit. So just because we're at 89% now, don't expect to double that. We're not gonna get there, but it is still a good number. So yeah, sales tax at 84%, real property tax at 97, and personal property tax at 108. So we've actually met that forecast. Motor vehicle tax is a little bit lower at 61, but that is not a major revenue source. And then as you can see for the general fund expenditures, we're actually doing quite well in terms of staying under budget, being only at about 40% of revenues or expenditures, sorry. So generally running about where we'd expect. Obviously, police is quite low. Fire is fairly low. Public Works is a little bit higher, but that is not unexpected because for one thing, that includes the $51,000 greater payment. And so that's obviously quite significant. And then also insurance tends to hit Public Works fairly hard because of all the vehicles that fall under its class. And of course, that insurance has already been paid. So even though Public Works is running a little bit ahead of the others, I do expect it to even out as the year goes by. Multi-purpose building at 75%. Again, I'm not real worried about that. Payroll doesn't hit multi-purpose building hard at all. But that's mostly the insurance that you're seeing there. Refuse is running a little bit ahead of revenue ahead of expenses, which is really nice. As I know Heidi has discussed in the past, the majority of the refuse that the crew picks up is, especially in the summertime, is actually city refuse. And so, it is actually I feel like it's a little bit more of a money earner than it appears just in the numbers there, because that is also accounting for all the time that they spend on the city refuse expenses. So our net effect for the general fund is currently a little over $340,000. Again, as our tax receipts go down, we'll probably see that come down a little bit, but still we're in good shape for the year. So that's nice to see. The water revenues funds and sewer, again, there's a note at the end of the finance report about this. Here, we do see that revenues are running behind expenditures quite a bit for water and a little bit for sewer. I took a look at these at the end of December just so that I was looking at complete months. And when I did that, I did see those turn around so that both those funds are in the black, not as much as we would like. And of course, we know that the issues that with the water treatment plant with just some fairly expensive components reaching their life expectancy and so on with all the extra overtime that we've had. We have seen unusual expenses for water. So it's not in as good a shape as we would like it to be. It's not in as good a shape as it was this time last year, but it is not quite as dire as that $13,000 deficit looks, because again, that's not reflecting any of the revenues for January, but it is reflecting all of the payroll. So yeah, so both water and sewer are actually in the black if you look at complete months, and I expect that they'll stay that way unless we have something else unanticipated happen. Dock, kind of the same situation. The dock is running behind. Dock is a little harder to measure because we only bill quarterly for that, and also because we don't know when the Tustamina is coming back into service. We certainly hope it'll be there in early April, but it is a little harder to forecast on that. Harbor and Jackaloff, we see a little larger deficit again. When I look at a complete month, the deficit is more like $18,000. But for Harbor and Jackaloff, of course, we know that that's normal because a lot of the revenue that we recognize is in the annual mortgages, and those are not billed out till the end of February. So even though the Harbor Jackaloff is running in the negative, it's not an issue of concern, and that should turn around when we start seeing the mortgages come in. And then boat haul out, the special revenue fund, that is actually running in the black, which is nice to see. That fund has done a good job of turning around the last 2 or 3 years. Obviously not much in the way of expense for that one this time of year. Since we're not doing any haul outs, there's not much staff time going to it. So that fund is doing pretty well. In terms of senior meals, we have spent out the ARPA funds. Those were spent out late September, early October. The borough funds are nearly expended, and so at this point we are mostly spending State of Alaska and Homer Foundation funds. We are seeing a drop in participation and a drop in donations the last couple months. I'm going to talk to the senior meals staff a little bit and see if they have a handle on what's going on with the donations. Not that we're not getting any, we're just not seeing the numbers that we normally do this time of year. But we still are serving more people than we have in previous years. We're getting good feedback about the meals. And so generally that program continues to go well. That is about all I have with this. We are just about finished up on grant reports because that's taking a little longer than it used to, but that's a good thing because it's taking longer than it used to because we have more grants. So that's been nice seeing more of those coming through. And I guess with that, I am open for question.
Great. Thanks, Jan. Appreciate your report this evening. Open it up to council if anyone's got any questions concerning the finance report.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
may I provide just a few items of input?
Sure.
So I just wanted to point out that we did introduce 3 ordinances for budget amendments at tonight's meeting. One of them is already implemented in the water special revenue fund. So while you're seeing this negative 13,000, it would actually be negative closer to negative 17,000, almost 18,000, without that change. And those were ARPA funds that were put directly towards wages. In the month of November, we had a really high wage month, so we covered part of that. And then additionally, one of those ordinances includes taking funds from the major maintenance and repair fund and applying it to the water fund and sewer fund. Sewer for a different issue, but for water related to some pretty major parts that we had to buy. So that'll be another a little over $3,000 that once that transfer is made will make this fund a little bit more whole. And yes, it is riding a fine line right now, but it's certainly not anywhere we would like to see it at this point in time in the year. So we're aware of that. Also with the dock special revenue fund, I don't know if you guys remember in the last budget session, last year's budget session, we did work it out. And I think the specification was in order for that fund to break even, it's about 86 stops that we need. And we're at 50 something. I don't have the exact number in front of me. So it really is dependent on that ferry. Hopefully it comes back on time and we get the number of stops that is suggested on the schedule, then we will make it then it will break even. But if not, then it'll continue to be in the red. So that's just something that is a reality of that fund. And I just wanted to make sure to point out those things. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Heidi. Appreciate the clarification on that. Any other questions, comments on the finance report tonight? Okay, great. Thanks, Jan. Appreciate you spending your few minutes with us tonight and giving us the update. Okay, next is item J2 Harbor Report. So Layla was on. I'm not sure if she went somewhere or not. There she is.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, got you loud and clear, Layla.
Okay, so as you guys heard a little bit ago, Jack Loff is all going in the right direction, and as of this evening, it's still there and still holding strong. One of the other exciting projects is Arc and Fire is currently here in Seldovia to complete the 10 finger pins, which with all these wins it's always nice to have him here. After he leaves this trip, it'll be 10 finger pins, so it'll affect 20 slips for vessels. Holding Corporation annual report, it's in the mail, and so we're just holding off and see where that goes, see if they need any additional information. And once that's all settled where it needs to be, we'll be putting out the applications for next summer in April. All the Arlo cameras are now installed at the multi-purpose building, the harbor, and the city office. The one that was a total lemon, Arlo actually replaced it at no charge to the city, and we got a new one. So that's been an interesting long go of a project. I'm glad it's done. Yeah, that's about it. Any questions?
I have a quick one for you on the licenses. You said the annual report had been completed and mailed off on our the permits. How many of those are latent versus actually have someone assigned to them or are used for last year for 24?
So last year we had 3 applicants and 3 users. In total, we have 7. So we have available permits for people that fit the guidelines.
Okay. Yep. Nope. Just so 3 out of 7 being used then. Okay, great.
Yeah, we do have two interested people that have showed interest, but I don't know how far that'll go.
Okay. Nope. Sounds good. I was just curious. Those applications will come out again in April.
Yes.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anyone else with any questions, comments for Layla regarding the harbor report tonight? Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Layla. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Everybody have a good evening.
Yep, you too. All right, looks like Amanda's up next for the maintenance / public works report.
Supposed to use this? Yeah, okay. Hey, everybody. Well, we haven't been doing any snow removal. But we have been doing a lot of sanding, and actually this has given us a lot of time to get in the shop and organize and go through stuff. 30 years of stuff piled on top of stuff on top of stuff, and we're getting a lot organized, and we got our new bay door in, so that was really exciting. Got to open it and close it during the power outage today, so that was pretty exciting too. What else? We went down and helped Curtis actually finish up the one finger on by the Laura S today. The wind's been obviously holding him back from getting a lot done, but we were able to help him today button that one up and did some other repairs down there. And yeah, we plugging along, keeping track of the septic lift station too. We were right underneath the inlet coming down off of Vista today with that power outage and our pump not being on, so that we had our trash pump out there and we're ready for an emergency situation, but luckily the power came on, so yeah. So that's what we're doing. We're monitoring lift stations and doing whatever else we can around. And anybody, if I can answer any questions, I'd be more than happy to.
Perfect. Thank you, Amanda. I have one for you, and you may or may not know it. What are we currently averaging as of late on our usage at the water treatment plant? Are we about where we should be? I'm not sure what we got for current leaks right now and stuff.
We'll pass that on to Radzi.
Oh, okay.
We are about where we should be for usage.
Okay. Do we have any leaks right now out in the system, or are we all fixed up?
I believe I haven't seen any indications of new leaks.
Okay.
Not lately.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may point out on page 42, Radzi did provide a report for 2024 usage. So
yeah, I see that one. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. And I think we're even lower today than we were for our lowest day last year, aren't we, for usage? What is our usage?
I don't
right now?
remember what the usage was today.
It's been pretty
it's
low.
been in the 30,000 gallons a day range.
No one wanted a cold shower.
I mean, I guess today wouldn't be a good measurement, but I mean, even when we've talked over the last couple of weeks, it's been pretty low. I think it's been below this 36,000 mark was what I was trying to say, which is really neat to see. We are aware of one area that does need to be fixed, is shut off, but Anderson, there's still a leak on Anderson that needs to be fixed. And we are also aware of an air pocket at the end of Shoreline, which is causing issue when we access the fire hydrant. And we are working on a plan for that, but we need to wait till spring because it could potentially turn into a big problem. So
Putting up a closed section on Anderson that has been described as Swiss cheese. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
at least that was the issue with Michael Opheim's water and with the air pocket. And so at least we know now how we can, remedy that after, using the hydrants and stuff. So he hasn't had any problems after our last.
yes, but potentially we are opening a hydrant tomorrow.
But we know how to take care of that. So that's obviously narrowed that much down anyway.
And we'll give public notice before we do that so people can watch and see if there's any issues with their system.
Okay, no, that's good. At least you guys have taken the time to figure out what's going on with some of these, weird things that occasionally pop up, like that one on that end of the system. So yeah, that one had me a little stumped there too. So, all right, cool. Well, yeah, we're saving a little wear and tear on our graders here, obviously. So that's Good. Probably saving a little on overtime. That's good. So yeah, no, all good. This will hopefully will help us in the long run, and then free us up for better things to come as we get closer to spring here. So of course you guys know we say this, and then February and March are just gonna dump on us. So we'll see what happens.
March is gonna hand it to us, I'm sure.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Thanks, Amanda. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Well,
Thanks for the hard work out there every day. I appreciate it.
good. That concludes our administrative reports this evening. So that's good. Item K, public hearings, none scheduled. Item L, unfinished business, none. And then let's see, item M, we've got item 1, resolution 25-32, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, authorizing the issuance of requests for proposals, RFP 03-2025, for the purchase and installation of a generation system for the city's multi-purpose building. And I'll go ahead and let the city manager take this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a little tricky one. We received funding and it's fast funding. It needs to be expended by June 30th, 2025. So with the size generator we're requesting, we're not sure if we will be able to order it and get it here in time, but we're doing everything in our power to get this RFP out sooner than later, in hopes that we can at least get the generator purchased in here. And hopefully installed. But there is a RFP in here, a draft for you guys to look at, starting on page 44. It has all the pieces in it that we've included in our grant application, as well as a scope of services. A scope of services that includes the generator selection, delivery, site preparation, electrical installation, fuel system installation and testing and commission. Project timeline, you'll see, is that really tight timeline. So we're hoping for a miracle. We'll see what happens. But if this is approved tonight, we will send it out tomorrow morning, first thing, and it'll close on, let's see, what date did that say? On the 18th is the last day to receive them, so that hopefully at the last meeting in February, we can bring back an award.
All right. Thank you, Heidi. We'll go ahead and open it up to council for questions or comments.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
I think Heidi probably kind of already answered the question, but I was looking at this, and there probably is no workaround on the deadline at all for it, because I know she kind of looked over at me because Chris did help to kind of come up with what we needed for this grant, and whether, whoever is able to do it. I know that when he was calling around, and it was a larger generator. So like, I'll put out there, he was like, I'm hoping, whether it's him or somebody else, he's like, maybe a different generator will be quicker, but it was a 6-month lead time. And I know that the tribe's generator was a long lead time and it got delayed. So I just wanted to put that out there so that we're all sending positive vibes that there's some manufacturer that can get the generator we need in a short time.
Yes. Lots of positive vibes, because this is the leftover COVID-19 funds. It's got to be gone. So last ditch effort to spend those funds out. Lots of positive vibes for this project, please.
And so, yeah, just to build on what Ashley said, then you can't have it purchased. You can't have it sitting there. It has to be completely installed, checked out, and running. I mean, their language was that explicit, where we can't come up with a.
It was not. So I'm thinking there may be ways if we can have it here. That's the big thing, or at least on its way. I think we can work with that. But if it's not even on its way or here, I don't know that there's anything we can do. So that's
Yeah,
the big piece.
I would agree with Ashley's assessment. I think the only way is it'd be a a nationwide search to see if there's something sitting on a shelf somewhere. To otherwise, from my experience and what we're seeing on our projects, there is no way it's happening for a custom build. So, yeah, most of ours are a year to 18 months still on the turnaround for the larger generator. This is a small generator compared to what I'm talking about, but still generators are just generally terrible along with all electrical gear and switch gear right now. So, all right, well, fingers crossed. We'll see what happens here on that. Any other questions, comments from council on, let's see, where are we at here? Switch the page on resolution 25-32. Okay, I'll just throw a quick comment. Yeah, I'm definitely in support of the resolution and to get this RFP out. We'll see what happens. Could find something. Never know. Once it's out and manufacturers have an opportunity to, or vendors have an opportunity to take a look at it, they could have something sitting there that somebody canceled. You never know. It's all things are possible. So if the money's there, let's give it a try and see what happens. Anyone from the public signed up or in person that wishes to comment on resolution 25-32?
No, Mr. Mayor, we don't have anybody signed up online and no one wishes to comment in the room.
All right, we'll bring it back to council for final action on item M1, resolution 25-32. What do you guys want to do?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 25-12.
32.
32, correct?
I'll second that, Mayor Campbell.
Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to approve resolution 25-32 with a second by Kennedy. Any further discussion on the motion before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of resolution 25-32. All those in favor, Kennedy,
Aye.
Keithley,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
and Langbart.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes with 5 in the affirmative and 1 absent. So that was resolution 25-32. Thank you everyone for that. And with that, we only have one item left here. Let's take a quick 5-minute break in case anyone's got to use the restroom, get a glass of water, and then we'll come back here and see what we want to do with item M2, which is the reconsideration of application to rezone. So given our previous issues here with the work session, but all right, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back and figure this out. Okay, just let me know when you're ready to get rolling again.
We're ready, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. We'll go ahead and come back to order and continue on tonight's meeting. Last legislative item, item M2, is reconsideration of the application to rezone waterfront resub number 1, lots 2 through 4, block 13 through 18, or block 13. And this is regarding the 18.97.010 B number 7, best interest of the public. As you guys know, we had a work session. See, Jack was not at that. We had to end it early because of technical difficulties. And we did have we had some good back and forth, and so obviously we'll go ahead and get started here and see what you guys want to do here. So Heidi or Liz, whoever wants to take this away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, that work session got cut a little bit short. I believe at the end, we were on a discussion point presented by Commission Chair Sweet regarding if there was a consensus with the council to accept the first 6 facts of finding presented by the Seldovia Planning Commission. I had pointed out that if you look at page it's 105 in the work session packet, but let me see what it is in the regular packet. You will see, should be, sorry, it's going to take me a minute to find it here. It shouldn't because it's the end of the packet. So page 160, 159 and 160, you'll see what those amendment procedure requirements are as they're written out in the code. And then we're just saying that if you guys are going to accept those for findings of fact, making sure that you run through what they are versus what the requirement is. And I can help cross-check that for you if that is beneficial, which was where we were at when the meeting was dropped. And then I did take notes if it's helpful for that conversation. Really just that we heard from council members of varying concerns and support. And with that, just looking at do the first 6, are they are those facts of findings accepted for the need and justification of the proposed amendment being number 1 down through 6? And then for number 7, if there's a consensus or deliberation, or even if it's an acceptance, if there is findings that want to be attached on top of that regarding opinions one way or another in order to solidify this process. I don't know if that's something that can be accomplished tonight. One thing that could be done is this discussion could be postponed for a future work session since that one was cut short, or just in general, if you guys need more information or more time. Otherwise, the request is for a consideration of introducing a new ordinance with the additional information provided by the Seldovia Planning Commission based on a determination made of findings of fact. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, and I do want to point out that we do have a new public comment that was pointed out during the work session. One from our applicant, Leslie Martin, one on page 36 of the packet. Nope, sorry, I'm still in the work session packet. One on page 90 of the meeting packet, and then one in the laydown. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Let me see. Yeah, there's a lot of information here, so almost a little too much, but let's see. So Leslie's comment on page 90 is her original one from November 27th, right? This was prior to the P&Z board meeting. So, okay. And yes, so that was 2 pages there. I do want to address one thing before we get started here on that. And she had, and I just want to make sure it's not swept under the rug, you know, considered old news. But one of her issues was about how the, I'm trying to look at the exact wording here. Hold on. It regards in relationship to the easement language that was slipped in there. She was not happy about that. At the meeting, and I know that we discussed that at length, and the attorney highly also recommended against that. And yeah, that was dead on arrival as far as I was concerned when that came over to council. So that never was an issue. And yeah, I think that was, I'll just say it, I think that was not completely. And so the way I understand that, that did come out of the final recommendation from P&Z over to council, correct?
Mr. Mayor, no, that was an add-on to the motion to investigate if that would be an option. It didn't change the application and it wasn't it didn't directly impact the application. It was just to ask staff to see if that was a possibility. Nothing related to the actual recommendation of the application or changing the application.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for yeah, now I recall. So, and then that's what, yeah, we investigated a little further, obviously, and then that's what how we came to the conclusion that, yeah, not something we were interested in doing. And probably most citizens would not appreciate that on, you know, getting that slapped onto their property without due process. So, okay, nope. So I think that was, you know, that was addressed fully. And so the other so that was her comment in November. And then you said there was one in the laydown, the most recent one, correct?
Mr. Mayor, and so you'll see that the laydown has the Jack Loft presentation, the public comment, and then the city manager's report. And along with that public comment is a response back. I did reach back out to her just to encourage that she was able to attend the meeting and present her comments or any additional information, as well as trying to just explain a little bit of the process with the packet material, and that it is required by code that all of the backup information accompany the application. As well as then the new information that was presented by the Seldovia Planning Commission and done through commissioner time for the majority of that. So just wanting to make sure that we clarified that in the discussion.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And you guys can read that. Obviously, her comment is on page 19 of the laydown, and then Heidi's response is right after that. And basically, her concern was that, I won't read it verbatim, but her concern was the you know, the amount of that this thing was getting, the whole crux of this was getting buried in the, you know, sheer volume of the backup. Yeah, again, after, you know, I went through everything, and yeah, there's a couple hundred pages here. I think when you add up between the work session and the packet, you know, it's a lot of redundancy, a couple hundred pages. I get it. It took me a little bit to get it all sorted out here, but yeah, no, definitely not the intent to bury anything. Just want to make that crystal clear, as Heidi had reiterated in her response back to Leslie in her original, or her comment there. So, all right, let's see.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
I was just gonna say, maybe because Councilmember Barber was not here earlier in the evening and we're missing another council person, maybe we should put this at this time of night, put this into a work session and go through each item 1 through 6. And so everybody understands what P&Z is asking from the council and what we're looking at. I think at this time of night maybe we could postpone it and do it at another time. That would be my consideration.
Okay. Any other thoughts, comments from council on that? Okay.
I'm good either way. I'm ready to answer those questions. It's in
Okay.
here.
Yeah, and I think I do want to just, because I think this is going to be this could be a little closer vote than than the original vote. And I do want to be able to take the time. I think Harmony should be here for the vote, and I think Jack should be able to get up to speed on what the issue is and how we're going through this. I just want to make it clear that in terms of process here, and I started to get into that a little bit at the end. So the original application, it was denied. That went through P&Z, came to us. P&Z's recommendation. It was denied because we had an issue with the criteria question number 7, right? And then so we, in a nutshell, we denied it, kicked it back to P&Z. And let's see, did we kick it back, or did P&Z's review get triggered by Leslie's application?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a rundown of that history with the application, or sorry. So the Planning Commission recommended the amendment to the zone and sent that forward, which came to the council as an ordinance form, which is provided by code, that amendment has to be made by ordinance. And then upon adoption of the ordinance, it failed council. So in order to close that application, it went back to the Seldovia Planning Commission by resolution to deny the application. However, because of the outstanding item, there was a desire to see the application completed and considered by the city council. So that's what's being presented here, is hopefully a completion of that criteria 7, and that if that changes the will of the council, or if there's a desire from the council to reconsider, then it would be brought back in ordinance form, and that's a 2 public hearing requirement. So an introduction and then, or sorry, a 2 meeting requirement, an introduction and then a public hearing. However, if there was not the desire of the council to do that, it would go back to the Planning Commission for a final denial of that application, and then the appeal process would start, or the timeline for appeal. And if that appeal happens, that again comes back to the council, but you guys would be the board of adjustment, and there's some pretty strict rules on how that process works, and the attorney is involved. And we go through that again with staff representing the city. So providing information, whether it's passes or fails, is pretty important, especially if it fails. But in both cases, that way, if it does end up getting appealed, then we have a direction to follow and can present, and that appeal process can take place. So hopefully that was what you were looking for, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, that was a lot more eloquent than I said it, obviously. So, and that's what I'm trying to say here. I'm not interested in rehashing this entire thing from the beginning of time. I get it. No, we're not going to agree. The townsfolk aren't agree. We're not going to agree. There's a process in place here. It's pretty straightforward. Read what's in front of you. There's 7 questions. That's where we're at. We're not in anything else. 7 questions. 6 of them, I believe, are not contentious, and the council agreed on the first go around. And I think we'll agree on those 6 again. Unless somebody has an objection, then we'd bring it to a vote on each one of those to make sure we have a clear written record and understanding of the first 6. Number 7 is much more complicated. Absolutely. It's a multi-part question, and it has to be answered in multi-parts. And that's what planning did. Planning went back, they broke it apart into 1, 2, 3. There's 4 questions within question number 7. They addressed all of those. So, and that was found on whatever page that was of the work session packet there, which is a new place in the regular packet there. But if you read those, and that's what we were doing, we were going down through that, and I had started to read the first 2 questions of that, and it seems in my mind that if we're following the process, all we have left here to do is answer question number 7, debate it, and see if we can come to an agreement that we agree on question number 7, strictly what is in our code and what is being asked in question number 7. I don't, Heidi, correct me. Do we have I mean, the council can do whatever they want, but I mean,
Right,
that's
Mr.
our
Mayor.
charge, right?
That's right, Mr. Mayor. And yes, we are looking at this criteria as determination, but if there are other justifications at the end, other overarching justifications, those can be attached as well.
Okay, then I guess the overarching justifications, if they don't fit in this criteria, then I guess if 4 people agreed on those overarching qualifications, then that would trump this, I guess. Or I mean, my point is, if someone is, because it's been this way forever, we don't think it should change. Simple as that. Disregard what they said in 2014. Disregard the 7 criteria. I mean, that's what you're saying, correct? As long as 4 people agree that there's something else that some reason they don't want this, then so be it. It doesn't come to fruition.
Well, I mean, not necessarily as simple as that. We did hear comments about, a variety of comments about the loss of the waterfront without the businesses, that is not supported by the public, from what a couple of council members are hearing, that the properties were bought with the intent to have a business. I'm sure they can rehash and bring up what some of those reasonings are, that there was a small staff when the 2014 comp plan went through, and there may not have been capability to do a full overview, and that this intent, the intent to have this change was not meant to be in there. And then on the other hand, we heard comments about supporting businesses, and being able to keep the goodwill, as well as including a moratorium or sunset decision, that there's not enough businesses, not enough business in town, so it can be very frustrating. So if there's some overarching themes that really lead to this decision, that don't necessarily fit in the box, or maybe they do, we can put that out there. And that was something that I was thinking through when I was hearing the discussion, is that we didn't have a firm grasp on the failure of the ordinance last time, other than some of these missing pieces. But really, maybe that does come down to, because there is a split in the community. So if that happens again, I think that making note of these differences and ideas, it's something that staff can make sure is written on the record and then presented back to the planning commission, to show that there really wasn't consensus, if you guys aren't able to reach that. So just throwing that out there. Hopefully I'm not overstepping. I'm just, as I was thinking through how complex this issue is, I don't think you guys are tied to a box.
Okay, no, that's what I wanted to get into, because I think for every point, there's gonna be a counterpoint on all of these other things that are gonna be brought up. So, okay, yes, fair enough. So we would answer question number 7. We would compare what the and I do agree. I think I think we will, I'll look for a motion to table this to time certain until we do have a full council, and Jack has a little time to get up to speed on this, but I think we answer number 7 to satisfy the criteria, see where that comes. I want to have a discussion on the absolute questions in the criteria to see if we can even agree on that. And then I know all of the other stuff will also, and I'm going to go back and read the code in the meantime to see exactly what it says in terms of what other stuff is to be considered if it's outside of this criteria here. Just to be sure. So, I like process, and I think we should follow process is my point here. So, okay, no, fair enough. Anybody else have any questions, thoughts on moving forward on this item?
If I may, Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
this is just kind of like a general thing for us to think about that was in my head tonight as I was looking through this, and number 1 through not all of number 1 through 6, but a lot of them that I would say like, yes, that like number 1 and 2 meet the are justified by what's in the comprehensive plan. I just wanted to kind of bring up with some new people on council and stuff that I think in order even for me to like feel right about voting on this, on like to address number 7 correctly, we had in this last year brought up the fact that this comprehensive plan, the ball was dropped and hasn't been followed. And we had started to have some discussions about it's, 10 years is a lot. To some people, it might not seem very long, but it is a long time. And that a lot has changed, and that since it wasn't followed and so much has changed, making sure before we follow a document that's that old that it's relevant. And I think that's something that's where my brain kind of goes to this, and where a lot of my hesitation is. And I just wanted to bring that up as something to think about, that I think that's something that we need to come up with a consensus to be able to vote on this. And I think we would have more agreement, because if we vote yay or nay, and then we decide to, stay with the plan we had and start implementing it, this would answer differently than if we revisit the plan and that plan changes, and we've now made a big decision that maybe wasn't what the plan would be, if that makes any sense. I don't want to like make a bigger issue, but that was something that we've been talking about doing, and I think it would make our decision better.
Well, more relevant.
fair-
Is that what you're trying to get at? Your decision, the decision would be much more relevant if
Yeah.
we had
Yeah.
a document that was
Because as somebody who wasn't here during that time, but then it's been brought up to us, it wasn't followed, and not that and I think this goes on a broad kind of my personal goals as I've been on council, and a lot of what I really honor that our staff has done is being able to find things that there's been a lot of stuff that hasn't been followed or implemented, and when it comes up, not just being like we have to follow it, but like what makes sense, and like making sure we adjust it for now. And I feel like this fits that same mold, and I don't want to make a decision one way or the other now tonight, kind of rethinking through that it isn't the interest of the people, because the interest of the people would be.
So, and to be fair, if I may point out to have a caveat on that, or to add to that, the city has been aware for at least a few years. It's been in the CIP that's been approved by the council and presented by the city, that our land use plans do not match our land use plans do not match our comprehensive plan. And the desire, and maybe it's because it hasn't been thought through, but I will point out that the desire or the intent when that was brought up into the CIP was to update both documents to be current and relevant, not necessarily to update the land use zoning to match the comp plan. So it might be semantics as a way to look at it, but I would say that there is a known history that this is an issue, and how it's addressed would be great feedback to have from council.
Yeah, because I think that's where a lot of my thought process, I realize it's much easier when I know we're following what we should be following, because I started to think about those discussions we had and goals. So.
Well, I think, Ashley, what you're saying is very relevant because, I mean, as we all know too, nothing is the same since the 60s, 70s, and 80s in Seldovia when all this was put into place and the dream of all these marine support businesses on the water, right? Certainly back in the 60s when, there was before the time there was, a road to Homer, and Homer was even a city, and Seldovia was the hub of the area here. And I think that's where a lot of those ideas and stuff had originally come from. So the bottom line too, and John had talked about this earlier, is, in terms of businesses, just most of us here have all either currently have a business or have been involved in business. Simple economics will drive whether or not your business, my business, or any business is successful in a small town. And basically in a small town, you can sugarcoat it any way you want it. They're all doomed. It's great. We do it because we love it, and that's the entrepreneurial spirit of us. And we might get 90 days when we make money, but the rest of the year, we lose money. That's what we do. And does it make good business sense? Absolutely not. And I don't care. I'll debate this with anybody in the community. Anybody. Unless you're printing money and selling gold, then you're making money, great. But anybody else that sacrifices all year long in a small community, you don't do it for the love of money. That I can promise you. You might get by, but you're not getting rich. So that's my soapbox on that. And I wanted to bring that up because that's been brought up a couple times about all these businesses and all this and the big pipe dreams of all the great big monsters and stuff. They're not out there. They're not there. They're not going to happen. We don't have the population to support it. Simple as that. So, what do you guys want to do here? First of all, let's see if anyone from the public is on, wants to make a comment, just to keep this in order and moving along. If anyone from the public's got a comment or wants to weigh in.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say something. I know all the players, even though I wasn't in the working session tonight, but I've listened to all the comments and I know what the ordinance is, but there wasn't any business in there before Walton M, or at least in the close future, there wasn't. And it's better to be part of something than all of nothing. And as a resident, and you zone it as light commercial residential, because what you'll do is you'll drive them out of there. You could make a stipulation they still pay the commercial rate on water and sewer. That's part of the revenue that the city's entitled to. And maybe put a moratorium on it that down the road in 5 years, but nobody's beating the doors down to start a new business on the waterfront. And so if you force them out of there, they cater to the local services that are here. And you're going to lose that. And, I guess you got to decide, what's worth what. But to play hardball and you drive them out of there, then it's going to sit vacant again. And the city, the population is, we're not growing and there's not a big demand for new businesses. So I don't know. That would be my consideration before I said, hey, you can't have a resident there, because they'll move on and it'll be vacant again.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, I think it could be a win-win for everybody. If you put a moratorium on it, you go ahead and keep the same water and sewer rates. And look at it in 3 years from now or 4 years. If you see a big influx in people and looking for places to start a business, then maybe you can reconsider it. But right now, I don't see that. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, so, but basically, I mean, so I guess I'm trying to figure out what your position would be, because right now, I mean, you can have the request would be to change it to a waterfront commercial residential, so which you can still have a business, but you can also not have a business. So that's it's almost, it is clearly, it's a better zoning than commercial business, because in commercial business you must have a business. So yeah, so you're in support. Are you in saying leave it as commercial business, or are you suggesting go to a waterfront commercial residential?
Yes, you may.
Are you wanting to leave it as a commercial business or go to a waterfront commercial residential?
I would leave, in my thinking, I would have it as light commercial water. That I don't know what business you would go and put in that location, but you know, the point that was in the thing, it's a dead end street, so it doesn't lend itself, even though there's a boardwalk to walk on. I understand but most of that's pedestrian traffic. But if you kept it as light commercial residential, look at the Madfish, how long it's sat vacant. There's been other businesses here. We've had 3 local bars and now we have 1. And so it's not, I don't see that it would hurt the city if you left it as light commercial residential for at least a 3-year period, or let them look at it down the road. I'm not sure you're going to gain anything if you run them out of there, because those people are the same people that are going to cater the local services here, and you're going to give up that in tax dollars as well.
Okay. Yep. No.
I mean,
Can I make a clarification for Jack, just because I think, so it currently, it's currently the waterfront or the commercial business district. They have to have a business, and but they can live there, and all of them do have a business currently. And so when we'd had the discussions, the zoning changes it to that they don't have to have a business anymore if they don't want to. So everyone's meeting the current requirements. I just wanted to make sure that you understand that.
It's optional, you know, but it doesn't do any good to create something where people can manipulate and said, okay, we're in the wholesale retail business of selling cosmetics, and then they don't stock anything and said, oh, we got to order it. And yeah, that qualifies them having a business. That's not what we're really looking for. Don't make it to where they got to, you know, if it's legitimate, that's one thing, but don't force them to try to meet the code with something that's really not legit. You know, I mean, that's not helping anybody. They're just circumventing the.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, and that's been brought up in the past too. I mean, that's the enforcement piece of this too, is a whole nother complex issue given our staff size and all of that. So I think at the end of the day though, I would agree. Heidi, if this was voted, if it was voted down, is it a 30 days or 1 year before it can come back?
1 year.
1 year. Okay. So that goes back to Ashley's comments then. Yeah. If you're not sure, and then nothing's going to be happening if it fails for a year, rather than maybe switching the conversation here and reprioritize, and we start talking about comprehensive plan update, And we did discuss here the last couple prior at a prior meeting that update, I mean, doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a complete. Let me ask you again, what does it have to be? How little or how much do we have to do on that?
Mr. Mayor, we are working through that process with the Alaska Municipal League and the Seldovia Planning Commission. I think the reality is that an update will update the majority of the document, but we can still use the same bones. So we're trying to look at the timeline and also the cost. There's a real potential that we could do it internally ourselves. However, I do have concern at the end of the day that we might miss something. And so to have some kind of a technical support would be beneficial. That's what we've been talking about with Alaska Municipal League. One of the things that they offered would be a snapshot of where we were in 2014 versus where we are now. What does our economy look like? What's that future projection for the community based on now? And they quoted that at $21,000. With that, I think they quoted the whole. We talked about just having them work as a tech support for us, or as technical support. And that quote was like 84,000 altogether, but then that there would be some value added to that because they want to provide it as a service. So they reduce that cost down into like the 60,000s, but even still, that's not necessarily something that we have in the budget, and we can talk about it. I'm sure we can find it if that's a priority. We're looking at other areas, like the American Planning Association has some documents that can help. But in these discussions that we're having, and in the discussions I had with the Alaska Municipal League, really the crux is that the goal is just that, is to hear back from the public on how relevant the plan is now. Can we look at those goals and say, yes, these are still the goals that we want, and then here's the implementation process that we'd like to see. These are the recommendations that we would like to see. I will say that while the land use was never updated, a lot of things have been done in the plan. And we are making progress on things. There are things that can come out of the plan because we have completed them. So I guess in a nutshell, regardless of budget, it's going to be a long process because it does need to come from the public, and we do need to have that public comment period, probably multiple, where we are receiving that feedback so that we ensure that it really is a document that captures the will and the desire of the public. One way that I look at it is just like we have in our budget, we have an organizational chart, and at the top of the organizational chart is the citizens, then it's the city council, then it goes down to the city manager and attorney, and then below that staff. And I really see that in this plan, that if done right, that plan is from the citizens. It is what they want. And then under that plan, you have your land use management plan, you have your CIP, you have all the other different family of plans that attaches back up into it and add value to it. But right now, especially with that land use piece, it's just kind of sitting on its own. So I guess that's not really a great answer, or maybe what you're looking for. You could just amend a piece of it, but if you really wanted to capture what the public has to say, I think you do need to give it the courtesy of an extensive period of time, up to a year, to allow that process to happen.
Can I offer a suggestion on that? Thinking through that, in my mind, if the staff was going to, yeah, obviously that's a lot of money. If the staff was going to do that internally, is take a look at the document and then simply mark up don't change the existing document, keep the existing document, mark it up to offer, strike the section, add a line, completed such and such or whatever, so that so that everyone can see the existing document and just basically the update, right? Or identify a piece as in conflict with Seldovia Municipal Code, such and such, right? Needs further review. Or economics have changed in this section. Economy is completely different from what it was 11 years ago. Requires public input. I'm talking just to develop a basic draft of kind of where a roadmap of where we even need to go. You know what I mean? Not a lot of editing, just a down and dirty review of where we need to go.
So I have that in pen form. And that's going to be coming up, not exactly that draft, but the Planning Commission just completed an audit of the implementation recommendations. And so at their next meeting, February 5th, there'll be a memo, final draft memo presented with those audit recommendations. And that was one thing that I did ask of the Planning Commission, is to do like a higher level review of the comp plan, and if there are any other overarching themes that should be addressed. For instance, under environment, we don't address climate change because that wasn't, that was more of a controversial topic back then. For one thing, I noticed overarching in the plan is that we don't have a lot of time put into keeping our existing facilities and infrastructure up to date and maintaining them. And that's one place where the CIP really addresses that. And so incorporating that CIP into the plan will help. And then, like I said, some things that are done and just some variations. So if you guys want, after we have the audit complete and that memo, we can present that back to the council. And then, and that'll include some of those overarching items. And then I could work on putting that draft into a digital form versus a pencil form, which is what it's in right now.
What's the timeline for that, Heidi? Are we talking a month, 2 months, 3 months?
I'd say 2 months minimum. I could probably get that back in March as long as I have time. We're also going to be working and going into the budget pretty heavily, so I'd want to do it beforehand.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I got you. So just thinking through this, our options, I like that idea of getting going on something like that, thinking then for where we're at in this process, and not to, we've got to either table it to time certain or postpone it indefinitely until it's brought back. A thought on that, we could time certain it, table it, or postpone it to time certain to both of them would be postponements. One would postpone it to a time certain in, a few months from now, so that if or postpone it till after budget, midsummer, or you guys maybe want to postpone it indefinitely and wait to see how this whole other process plays out. I don't want to, torpedo it with no action, for forever here, but it's you guys. Yeah, I'm open to what you guys want to do here.
Mr. Mayor, just for a point of clarification, if you guys postpone it indefinitely, that does kill it. That is, it dies, and then it will go back to the Seldovia Planning Commission again to deny the application, and that way we can start the appeal process and provide that timeline to the applicants that they're due. That is in code that we provide that. If you postpone to a time certain, typically that is to the next meeting. Though I think if there's a justification for information, that can go a little bit longer. But I just want to make you aware that that time doesn't affect the applicants. So there is an impact there on that delay and not being able to have that due process if an appeal is needed.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
One other point I was going to, commercial waterfront. Okay, statistically, if you look around, usually is in the food and beverage, hotels. That being said, I don't see where we need more restaurants or hotels in town. So an Ace Hardware store can set inland 2-3 blocks. They're going to do the same amount of business. Where if it was commercial waterfront, normally restaurants, hotels, bars, those are the people that business it would be on a waterfront and paying the price tax wise. And this is the other side of it, is if you look at the tax structure on that commercial waterfront versus residential that's setting in 2 or 3 blocks. So there's some tax value there by somebody being there versus, and I don't think if you did look at the hotel and food and beverage industry, the location doesn't lend itself to the parking that would require. I think there's only is there 2 parking places or something down there that they have? I don't think there's adequate parking for much of any kind of volume of people.
No, I think the parking is 100% in violation of everything down there because there's no room for its current zoning for parking down there. I've already looked at that. They'd start having to build little mini boxes down there to get any of the required parking, most likely. I haven't measured it out, but I know what my parking is, and I know what I've spent to create it, and I know how many businesses don't have the required parking, and that's a whole nother story.
Thank you.
So you're spot on with your comment there. Yes, that area does not lend itself to the correct amount of parking down there for any kind of typical retail waterfront business. All right, what do you guys want to do? Open the suggestions.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, this discussion could go on all night long. I think Ashley had some very good points. And I think there's a lot that is not known about these properties. And again, these properties have the potential in 10, 20, 30 years from now to be fine businesses and residents. If we eliminate that they can be just residential, then, as I've said a million times before, we're doing damage to our community. Right now, Stranick, he uses his building, as Ashley said, these buildings being used. Leslie has plans of doing a B&B down below. Lafine has a service in his building, his home. So they're being used. Are they being used to their utmost efficiency? I have no idea. Or do they have business license? Yes, they do. And the city of Seldovia, as I said, we allow people to do and promote them to have a business. And I don't want to be the person who takes away the potential to a property and turn it into a residence only. So to me, and the people who spoke with me, I would rather see this thing just die and go away. But I also think going through the comprehensive plan and see what's relevant and see what works. And the interpretation of number 7 is, again, for the public, and the public meaning the people within the city limits and those out of the city limits. And so I'm not really sure what the rest of the council wants to do. I think it's getting late tonight, but I think we should either let it drop, let it go for a year, then it comes back and reins it ahead again. Or we come back, we meet in a couple of weeks when the whole council's there, and we have another discussion going through each one of the items, see if all the council members agree 1 through 6 are just perfectly fine the way they've been presented, and then go through 7 and see what the facts and findings were that the planning and zoning put together. But to me, it's getting super late where I'm at. I'd rather see this thing move on to another meeting time, or it drops and goes away. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, sounds good, Vivian. Appreciate that. Yeah, and I think that's where we're at here, looking for a motion to postpone this, just trying to figure out to when. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't think it's right to just do nothing. I think if we're going to do it, we bring it back. Then if it's next meeting, we have it maybe as the first item on the agenda while everyone's fresh and not beat up late in the evening. And we just get right to it, discuss it, and it either passes or fails. If it fails, Heidi, you're saying it goes back to P&Z, and then the actual appeal process can start.
Correct, Mr. Mayor. And one thing I would throw out there is if you guys do want to postpone it till the next meeting or have a work session for it, we could at least present the comprehensive plan and an overall look of it. It will be after we have the audit report from the Planning Commission. So it could be a start, and maybe that will help with the conversation if it doesn't convolute it more. But I'll throw that out there that I think I can have the bandwidth to at least present something, if not a complete draft.
Would you need that at next meeting, or do you want to give yourself a meeting and go to the following meeting?
We could, but then after that, we really have to jump hard into budget.
Yeah. So choice is yours. What would you rather just do it here in 2 weeks then?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
That's where I'm at too, Mayor Campbell.
Okay. All right. No, fair enough. If everyone's in agreement, then let's go ahead and get a motion to postpone this till the next meeting. And then Heidi, I would just ask that we have it as the first item of business that night, so we can make sure everyone's fresh and we get right into it. And then we probably do have a work session prior to that meeting.
Yes, we can do a work session prior to that meeting. We will have, because of order of operations, there are those 3 ordinances on there that typically come up first for public hearing. So we may just have to do a suspend the rules or an amend the agenda to bring it up, but I'll look into the best way to do that.
Yeah, and if they're non-controversial and we can get through them, I'm fine with that too. I don't want to have another couple of controversial items on here, and then that thing gets tube tied again, at that time. So
Mayor Campbell,
yep, go ahead, John.
I'll make a motion. We postpone this to the following meeting.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Kennedy to go ahead and postpone. Let's see here. Let me get organized here real quick. Postpone the reconsideration of the application to rezone to the next meeting. We have a second. It was either Langbart or Ashley.
Keithley.
Okay, let's call it Langbart. And motion is seconded. Any further discussion on the motion before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote. All those in favor of postponing until next meeting: Kennedy,
Aye.
Keithley,
Aye.
Langbart,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
and Rojas.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Item M2, reconsideration of application to rezone waterfront resub number 1, lots 2 through 4, block 13 is postponed until the next meeting. Okay, thank you everyone for that. We'll move right into the city manager's report, and that's found in your laydown.
Yes, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some quick updates on our ongoing project list, the City Office Maintenance and Shop Energy Improvement Project. As you heard from Public Works, the new bay door was installed, as well as a replacement panel for the bottom of one of the fire hall bay doors. That's really cool to see. Resolution approving the issuance of an RFP for the installation of the maintenance shop will be presented at an upcoming meeting. For a raw water transmission line replacement project, we did respond to the latest request for more information for the environmental review, and we're still waiting back to hear about that grant execution. They were hoping to have that done this month, but maybe, next month we'll see how that works. Our technical support guru, Greg McGee with RCAC, has agreed to help us write the RFP for that project. And that's something that we're going to start this week, so that once that grant execution goes through, we can get that RFP issued and hopefully get that project off the ground. The CDS request material for safe roads, we've got that $22,000 in funding that's been tied up in the state STIP and through the Alaska DOT. They asked that we write a formal letter requesting that those funds be transferred to the Denali Commission. I did that. I think that was last week. You'll see it is attached in the packet. And then I also reiterated that we are waiting to hear back from DOT regarding the rest of the city's initiatives. And I haven't received a response yet regarding those. VSW project update. I did receive word from Village Safe Water that they remain behind on issuing the RFPs for the city's 3 projects. Those are the Seldovia Water and Sewer Overview Planning Project, the Seldovia Sewer Improvements Construction Project, and the Seldovia Sewer Treatment Improvements Project, and that's in the design phase. However, they reassured me that they are hoping to have at least the planning project RFP issued by, they said the end of this month, but I'm being generous and saying the end of next month, and I'll continue to follow up with them on that. Kenai Peninsula Borough hazard mitigation plan with the inclusion of the city of Seward and city of Seldovia was approved by FEMA. So that means we are in good standing for our hazard mitigation plan. That approval period is from December 12th, 2024 through December 11th, 2029. So if in the event of a disaster, an emergency, those funding opportunities that are available from FEMA will be opened and available to us. And we want to thank the borough for including us in this process. They do plan on including the rest of the municipalities in the 2029 update. And hopefully that just continues to get smoother and smoother as it goes. Our stormwater management plan, we were hoping to have a presentation of the final draft at the next meeting. That might be tricky with what we just did. I didn't think about this because that is due at the end of the month. So it won't leave you guys any time to comment on it if we push it to the next meeting. I'll talk to the mayor. We'll look at what that looks like with the agenda schedule for that stormwater management plan draft review. City logo rebrand project. You guys were provided with 3 concepts and asked to vote and provide feedback on one of those, to pick one out of the 3. I think we had, if I'm counting up on my head, we had 15 people vote and give us one vote per item or one item per person, and 8 over half were voted for number 3. So we are moving ahead with that one. And I'm hoping to present that here at the next meeting, but we'll make it go later on the meeting by resolution to be accepted by the Seldovia City Council as the new city logo. That's been a really neat project, and it's been great to work with Acola Collier on that. Jackloff Bay Dock, I won't go into the nitty gritty. So we just had that great update from Moffett and Nickel. I will say, though, that we did submit a statement of interest to the Denali Commission last week for that gap funding, that 400. We went with that middle number, 481,000 and some odd dollars, as well as that'll be submitted to both the state and Murkowski's office for legislative requests. And multipurpose building project, you guys improved the RFP tonight, so we'll see, fingers crossed, where we get with that. Everything else you've already been presented, so please let me know if you, I will say one thing, along with the attachment for the FEMA approval letter and the letter requesting those funds be transferred to the Denali Commission. I did finally have a moment to update the ongoing grant progress report. So that's on page 25, just to give you a snapshot of all the grants. Looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 that we're moving through right now in the city. We've got and then we've got our 2 partnership grants, that one being the Safe Street Roads for All grant with the Kenai Peninsula Borough, several pending grants that we're being awarded, but we have to work through the pre-award requirements, and then pending grants that we've submitted applications for. So if you want to know what the city office is doing in their spare time, that's where we're at. And I joke, there's no spare time. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Any questions or comments for the manager on the manager's report? All right. Awesome job on the grant section. Super cool to see all that stuff happening. I know a couple years ago we started talking about going into full grant mode and how difficult it was with the small staff that we had. I think we're leveraging everyone to the best of their ability here, and then excited to see getting a little outside help from AML moving forward also on some larger grant stuff. So yeah, good things ahead, you guys. Good things ahead. So appreciate all the information. Item O, informational items not requiring action. Don't have anything. Item P, executive session, none. Item Q, council and mayor comments concerning items not on the agenda. Kennedy.
Nothing additional tonight. Thank you.
Keith Lee.
Just that with all the fun weather we had, if you happen to go drive by the ice rink site, it is no longer a disaster and put back together. And we're hoping that we'll actually get to use it later this week since we have winter coming, unless the weather changes again. So thank you for everybody for your positive support on that and understanding that we were learning a lot. And this was a year to really learn a lot because it's weird. Thank you.
Thanks for that update, Ashley. Glad to hear that's back together. Langbart.
No comment at this time. Thank you, Ashley. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Barber.
I don't have any comment.
Okay. Thank you. Rojas.
Just good work to everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Appreciate the spirited discussion again tonight on everything. And yeah, thoughts and prayers go out to the families. I saw a news flash just came in. There was another double fatality tonight on the Seward Highway. And I myself have taken a big reconsideration on the amount of my drives here. Without my regularly scheduled air service here, I can't do it with the weather pushing my luck on that highway as much as I am typically used to driving. So yeah, I know there was warnings out for today that the highway was going to be super bad. So didn't like to see that by any means on the news. So thanks everyone for your comments and everything tonight. Next meeting will be held on Monday, February 10th. 2025 at 6 p.m. And I'll go ahead and look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn with second. Any objection? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.